At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. We fit car tyres for over 500,000 customers every year. We could fit yours at one of over 350 garages, or even on your driveway with our mobile experts, which means you can safely hit the road again and surprise that special someone.
Happy birthday!
From tyre fittings to MOTs, there really is no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working-safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Here's Emily Chang.
With so many people working from home, the increase in internet traffic has also led to an increase in cyber attacks and an increase in demand for cybersecurity products, now more than ever. Here to weigh in on the industry impact is Tom Layton, co-founder and CEO of Akamai Technologies. Tom, good to have you back with us. First of all, what kind of activity are you seeing out there in terms of cybercrime, especially in the last 3 to 4 months now that we've been sheltering in place?
It's across the board. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the 2 largest denial of service attacks ever. A bank in Europe faced close to 1 billion packets per second in an attack. We're seeing attacks to steal online accounts. They've doubled year over year. And with the remote workforces, with employees being at home, we've seen a factor of 5 increase in these devices going to malware sites. And that's because people are clicking on phishing links or going to the wrong site. And that's just in the last 2 months, a factor of 5 increase. So, the threat actors are very active right now.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are erasing declines at the end of a volatile week for stocks, ignoring a resurgence in new virus infections across the country. European shares are gaining on low volumes, while the dollar is steady. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up a point now. Dow futures down 49. NASDAQ futures up 12. The DAX in Germany is up 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.9% or 35 cents at $39.07 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.25% or $4 to $17.7460 an ounce. The euro 1.1223 against the dollar. British pound 1.2398. And the yen 106.95. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Karen, the number of new infections in the United States hit a record yesterday. More than 37,000 new cases, topping a level set in April. Hospitals in Houston, Texas are out of ICU beds. Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey says they're likely to hit surge capacity soon. The White House Coronavirus Task Force will hold its first briefing today since April. This as parts of upstate New York will enter phase 4 of reopening today, and New York City is about to enter phase 3 a week from Monday. And the House of Representatives has approved a police reform bill. It's not likely to get very far, though. A Senate Republican effort collapsed earlier this week. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Amy, thank you. It's 6:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and we're joined now by Stephen Gallo, head of European FX strategy at BMO Capital Markets. Nice, as always, to talk with you, Stephen. And I'm curious to get your outlook for the dollar. As Karen mentioned, it has been holding steady in the current session, but it's well off its peak for the year. With coronavirus continuing to spread, where do things go from here?
Well, It's a great question. That's the question of the age, really. I think FX markets and investors are in a moment of reflection and assessment, and I think there will be many more moments like this between now and year end. It's very difficult now to work out how the balance of leftism and centrism forces would look, for example, if there is a political upset in November, and what their implications would be for economic and trade policy in the U.S. So that needs to be taken into account. But I also think the problem with all of this stuff that we're seeing now, news flow-wise, whether it's the pandemic, trade, economic data, investors interpret these things in countless different ways. So, human behavior is impossible to model in the best of times with a high degree of uncertainty, and especially now, it's very difficult to model. So it's difficult to know exactly how investors are viewing what is coming at them in terms of news flow right now.
What about the liquidity that we've seen from the Fed in recent months, the extraordinary monetary support we've gotten? Does that continue to keep the dollar in check?
Yes, I think it's helped a great deal. It certainly calmed fears regarding lack of dollar funding down. I think what's remarkable, though, is that year to date, various different measures of the broad value of the dollar, you can look at a few, but they're still up. So even with that degree of Fed intervention, the dollar is still holding on to small gains year to date. And that suggests that even with the uncertainty facing economic and trade policy for the U.S., there really is still a lot of, or very little, I should say, enthusiasm for other non-dollar currencies. You could argue that a political upset in November in the United States would change that picture dramatically. It could do, but I think even on that, uncertainty remains very high right now.
Are you looking at the possibility of a political upset in November?
Oh, you have to. Yeah, I think you have to take it. You have to take it seriously. Certainly, it's probably come to bite us a bit more than we were expecting in terms of the impact on FX markets. But as I say, it's still very difficult to know what that type of an upset would mean for economic and trade policies. And at the same time as that you have that happening, you have trade policies, rhetoric, etc., generally looking more protectionist in other parts of the world too. So you can't say with certainty that if there is a political upset in November, the trade environment and the economic environment for the global economy becomes so much better.
I wonder if it can be termed as an upset at the moment, though, when you have Joe Biden leading in just about every poll right now, particularly that New York Times Siena College poll that came out this week that had him 14 points ahead of the president across the country.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But what I mean by upset is that a shift in the paradigm for economic and trade policy. So you're going to have elements in that type of a government. If you go by what the polls say, you're going to have elements in that type of a government which we haven't experienced for decades, if ever, in the United States. So, those battle lines, ideological fractures within certain elements of politics in the U.S., they will need to be rectified if that political shift comes after November. And as I say, it's difficult or impossible to model human behavior with a high degree of certainty, even in good times or in normal times. Now, you don't know how businesses, how households, and how investors will react to everything that they're seeing on a daily basis, whether it's trade, economic policy, or obviously news on the pandemic.
Yeah, and certainly between now and November, in a lot of ways, that can be an eternity, not just in politics, but in the economy with so much uncertainty, of course, surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. But good, as always, to get your thoughts this morning, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Stephen Gallo is head of European FX strategy at BMO Capital Markets, and looking at the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index right now, it's holding steady, up about less than 0.1% right now. for Bloomberg Dollar Spot. As for equity futures, kind of fluctuating at the moment. S&P futures are a little changed right now. Dow futures are down 65 points. NASDAQ futures higher by 12.5 points. The 10-year Treasury up 3/30 seconds, yield 0.67%. 2-year yield 0.17%. And the euro is at 1.1226 against the dollar. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stock futures are narrowly mixed this morning. The nation yesterday saw a record daily number of coronavirus cases reported. Florida, California, Arizona, and Texas account for almost half of all new cases. Texas Governor Greg Abbott halted the reopening of the state economy. Today we get a look at personal income and spending for May, and the University of Michigan releases its latest consumer sentiment reading. Apple is shuttering more recently reopened stores in Florida because of the rise in COVID-19 cases. 14 additional stores are closing today across Florida, leaving Apple's Jacksonville and Sarasota stores the only ones still open in the state. This brings to 32 the number closed after recently reopening. The company has 271 U.S. stores. It was a higher close for Wall Street yesterday. The Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ all gaining just over 1%, led by financial stocks. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Different adapts, different overcomes, different keeps moving, different keeps thinking, different stays connected, different never stops dreaming. The University of Northampton invites you to a virtual open day for a taste of all the benefits of studying with us from this September. Search University of Northampton Virtual Open Days. It's the future, but different.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
This is a message from the government. Some businesses are now able to welcome back their employees and customers. To keep everyone safe, it's important you follow government guidance and make your workplace COVID secure. Businesses should carry out COVID-19 risk assessments, put in place hygiene procedures, and help staff and customers keep a safe distance. Talk to your employees, listen to their concerns, and if possible, help them to work from home. Every workplace is different, but by following this guidance, you can get back to business safely and play your part in managing the risk of infection. Visit gov.uk/working safely for more information. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Tuesdays at KFC gonna get you like, wow, pow, chow, kapow, get down right now. If you know how, then take a bow, because this deal's gonna raise a brow. Get 9 pieces of original recipe chicken for an eye-popping $5.99. What the... Every Tuesday at KFC. Participating restaurants ends 18th of August 2020. Tuesdays only, subject to availability, not available online.
Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date in the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are mixed as we close out the trading week. The U.S. has reported the biggest ever jump in coronavirus cases. The governor of Texas halted the reopening of his economy. North Carolina also paused plans to loosen restrictions this week, along with Louisiana and Kansas. The White House Coronavirus Task Force will hold its first briefing in about 2 months.
Bank shares are under pressure this morning. The Federal Reserve told the biggest U.S. banks they can't increase dividends or resume buybacks through at least the third quarter as uncertainty over the course of the global pandemic weighs on lenders. Shares of Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo are down between 2% and 3%.
Nike shares down 3%. The company posted a surprise loss in disappointing sales in the fiscal fourth quarter. We get more from Bloomberg's Doug Krisner.
It's an about-face from earlier this year when Nike beat estimates, even as many consumer brands struggled. When the virus outbreak hit, Nike maintained it was prepared because of its experience in China. Like many brands, Nike invested in online platforms to make up for stores being closed. But booming e-commerce failed to counter for a slump in brick-and-mortar sales. Revenue of $6.31 billion was more than $1 billion less than forecast, and Nike's gross margin sank 8.2%. I'm Doug Krisner, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Doug, thanks. Later this morning, the government issues data on consumer spending, and economists are forecasting a partial rebound in May. Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice reports.
In April, consumer spending posted a record drop, and the outlook is hazy as the coronavirus lingers. Bloomberg Economics says spending will get hit again by, quote, problems unlocking the economy, too abrupt an end to fiscal support, and postponed bills finally coming due. A Federal Reserve study says more than one-third of America's lowest-paid workers have been laid off, about 4 times the number of job losses among top earners. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. Amazon reportedly has agreed to buy self-driving car company Zoox. According to tech website The Information, Amazon will pay more than $1 billion, and that gives the company control of a startup that has designed a driverless vehicle to be used in urban areas. Right now, S&P futures are higher, up 3.5 points. Dow futures down 48. NASDAQ futures up 17. The 10-year Treasury up 3/32. Yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.7% or 28 cents at $39 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $3.50 at $17.74.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1230 against the dollar. British pound 1.2404. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Okay, thank you, Karen. It's 6:33 on Wall Street, and Amy Morris has more on what's going on this Friday morning. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Nathan. As the rest of the nation still struggling with the surge in coronavirus cases, New York seems to have gotten a handle on things. Governor Andrew Cuomo announcing that state is seeing its lowest number since the pandemic began, with fewer than 1,000 people hospitalized with coronavirus.
That is the lowest number since we started. We have 17 deaths today, which is one of the lowest numbers since we started.
Which means upstate New York is on track for Phase 4 reopening today, including Finger Lakes, North Country, Mohawk Valley, and the Southern Tier. It doesn't include malls, gyms, or movie theaters, but it does include outdoor recreation like zoos and gardens, and some indoor facilities like museums at lower capacities. New York City is ready now for Phase 3, starting a week from Monday. Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Our basketball courts, our tennis courts, our soccer fields, our volleyball courts, our dog runs, our handball courts, and for all of you who love Italian culture, our bocce courts as well. All of that on track to open up Monday, July 6th.
Indoor dining is at 50% capacity, and now personal care services like nail salons are permitted under Phase 3 with restrictions. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says some counties are seeing higher transmission rates. NJ.com reports the coronavirus transmission rate has increased in 16 New Jersey counties over the past week, some at least 50%. But the governor says the trend is still good and the rate is still low enough to continue with phase 2 reopening plans. We still don't have all the results from Tuesday's primary. Jamal Bowman is leading incumbent Elliot Engel in New York's 16th congressional district. He says he's pretty sure he won, even though the absentee ballots aren't counted yet.
We're doing very well, and there's no statistical reason to believe that the mail-in ballot count is going to be much different than what we're already seeing.
The latest count, with 100% of the precincts reporting, shows him leading Elliot Engel 61.8% to 34.9%. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
6:35 on Wall Street. Amy, thank you. Now time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Thanks, Nathan. We just had the lengthy and ugly baseball labor dispute. Are we heading towards another one in hockey? NHL players approved the playoff format, but the union has not yet voted on a return to work. And the Rangers' best player, Artemi Panarin, said on social media that they should not agree to return without a change in the NHL's economic system, where right now some of the players' pay is put in escrow. Another NBA player is going to not be part of the restart. Dallas's Willie Cauley-Stein wants to stay home, not miss the birth of his first child. The NBA says this season coaches don't have to wear sport coats during games. Vince Carter has officially retired from the NBA at age 43, an incredible 22-year career that began in 1998. Only player ever to have played in 4 different decades. Carter spent 5 seasons with the New Jersey Nets. Liverpool won the English Premier League for the 19th time, but for the first time in 30 years had an amazing season, going 28-2-1. 29-year-old Canadian Mackenzie Hughes shot a 60, leads the Travelers Golf in Connecticut by 3 shots. The postponed Kentucky Derby is now September 5th, and Churchill Downs announced that unlike the recent Belmont, when Tis the Law won before empty seats in New York, some fans will be allowed in for the Derby, although well short of the 100,000 they would normally have. The 60 instead of 162-game baseball season is the shortest by percentage in history for any of the pro sports leagues. Vegas has adjusted its projected win totals. The Yankees are now at 36, just behind the Dodgers at 37. The Mets are at 32. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
NASCAR has released a picture of the noose that was found in driver Bubba Wallace's garage at Talladega Super Speedway. It was found just weeks after Wallace spoke out about the presence of the Confederate flag at NASCAR events, which were subsequently banned at races. Bubba Wallace spoke to Bloomberg Quick Take's Brian Wall.
It's been a rough couple of days just because people don't understand and don't want to listen to the facts. They just see it as a fake and as a hoax. But, now that all the facts are delivered out there, the more research that NASCAR did is if that's not enough for people, then that just shows how much further we have to go in the world to get peace.
Earlier this week, the FBI concluded there was no hate crime at Talladega and that rope had been there since as early as last fall. In the UK, Britain's car production plunged to the lowest level for May since 1946. Bloomberg's Sebastian Salick has the details.
The drop is again thanks to car makers having to idle factories to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Output dropped 95% to just over 53,000 vehicles in the month. That's according to the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. Still, that's an improvement on April when only 197 cars were built. The SMMT repeated its call for the government to support the industry, saying 1 in 6 jobs are at risk.
In London, I'm Sebastian Salick, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, Sebastian. Today could be one of the highest volume stock trading days of the year as the Russell indexes adjust their weightings. Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky has a preview.
Rebalances often fuel high-volume trading as investments that track the indexes buy and sell to mimic the benchmarks. And this one is likely to be a record breaker. In a note earlier this month, Keefe, Bruyette & Woods predicted net trading could be around $65 billion, most of which will take place in the minutes before the close. Large market moves from the COVID-19 pandemic are expected to make the changes more sizable than in other years, with bigger companies getting bigger and the decline in small company values getting steeper. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thanks, Larry. NYSE President Stacey Cunningham says companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange raised billions while its trading floor was closed.
We saw a number of companies leveraging both equity and debt throughout the pandemic. Just in those weeks the floor was closed, we raised over $35 billion, or companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange raised over $35 billion during that period of time using follow-on offerings as well as capital raising in a more traditional IPO process.
Cunningham made those comments to Bloomberg's David Weston. 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Jeff Bellinger.
One of the biggest challenges in the global fight against climate change is cutting emissions from aviation. And officials in the European Union have come up with a plan to speed things along. Airlines, airports, manufacturers, and pilots associations have called on the EU to ensure that the sector gets help from an $845 billion coronavirus rescue plan. The EU wants to tie financial aid to its Green Deal climate strategy. It has proposed making funds available only for projects that are in sync with the region's plan to reach climate neutrality by 2050. The aviation industry wants the EU to help boost sustainable aviation fuels in Europe through possible investments in production facilities. A letter seen by Bloomberg News suggests the EU might also allow for the Recovery Fund to launch a green incentive program for airlines to replace older aircraft with modern planes. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, Jeff, thank you. Futures are mixed at the moment. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
Well done, you. You finally completed that DIY. But don't stop there. A better bed makes a better you, and you've earned it. But Hop into Dreams. They'll find you your perfect mattress with this clever bit of technology called Sleep Match. It takes just 3 minutes. They've introduced safe shopping measures like hand sanitizer, face masks, distance markers, and your own single-use pillow and mattress protectors. Dreams are bound to find you the perfect bed for a great night's sleep. Stay safe. Sleep well. Dreams.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like when your week off is forecast warm and sunny. Or when there's an extra unclaimed sausage left on the barbecue. Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that feeling. Nice, isn't it? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
To a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
The U.S. House passes the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act.
The yeas are 236. The nays are 181. The bill is passed.
The bill is named after the man whose death in Minneapolis at the hands of police led to national and global protests. Democratic Representative Jim McGovern called the bill a major step forward.
There are systemic problems here that require systematic solutions.
While House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said solutions also require bipartisan input.
Name me one amendment that the Democrats allowed in committee.
The Republican leader of the Senate has already made it perfectly clear he will not take up the House's bill. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Iran's UN ambassador says he believes a U.S. resolution to extend an arms embargo against his country will be defeated and is warning it would be a very, very big mistake if the Trump administration tries to reimpose sanctions. I'm John Trout.
Pandemic information is coming at you so quickly, it's hard to react, never mind plan.
How bad do you think it's going to get?
How much more cutting do you need to do?
Here's help. Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update brought to you by SEI. Since its founding 50 years ago, SEI has provided investment managers and asset owners with robust infrastructure platforms and flexible outsourcing solutions. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. U.S. stock index futures erased their declines at the end of a volatile week for stocks, ignoring a resurgence in new virus infections across the country. European shares are gaining on low volumes while the dollar is steadying. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, they're up 3 points now. Dow futures still lower, down 49, and NASDAQ futures are up about 18. The DAX in Germany is up 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.17%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.9% or 33 cents at $39.05 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.25% or $4.10 at $17.74.50 an ounce. The euro 1.1232 against the dollar. The British pound 1.2413, and the yen is at 106.88. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
Karen, we continue to track the coronavirus case surge across the United States. The country saw a record number of new cases, more than 37,000 just yesterday. But the numbers in New York continue to fall, and parts of upstate New York will enter Phase 4 today. New York City is on track to enter Phase 3 after the 4th of July weekend. And now the White House Coronavirus Task Force will be holding its first briefing in 2 months later today. Meanwhile, police reform continues to divide Congress. 2 days after a Republican police reform bill failed in the Senate, the House of Representatives has approved a wide-ranging police reform bill. It's just not expected to go very far. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. We're at 649 on Wall Street. That's time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in the nation's capital. The House passed that sweeping police reform bill that is likely to go nowhere in the Senate. The Trump administration urging the Supreme Court to throw out the entire Affordable Care Act in a filing last night. And the White House Coronavirus Task Force is set to hold its first briefing in about 2 months. Also making news, President Trump apparently paying little mind to the coronavirus surge as he presses ahead with his re-election campaign. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg News politics editor Kathleen Hunter. Kate, the president hasn't announced any new initiatives, and most White House officials we've heard from and spoken to don't sound too concerned about the increase. So what's the latest?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a sense from the Trump administration, and particularly from the White House and the president, that it's business as usual. I think that they have continued to sort of stress the idea that while the number of cases are going up, that hospitalizations and the death trend is still going down. Now, of course, that could change because we tend to see hospitalizations and death rates lag a bit behind new cases. And so we could see that change in the next couple of weeks. But for now, that's what the Trump administration, the president himself, via some tweets last night, seems to be emphasizing. And I think that we would expect that to likely continue and not change going forward.
Could we see some new initiatives come out when the task force holds that briefing today? Unlike the past briefings that we're all familiar with from the spring that were held in the White House press room over the last couple of months, today's briefing is going to be held at the Health and Human Services headquarters, right?
Yeah, and so it's going to be, I think, symbolically or optically, that kind of creates some distance from the White House, which, you know, given that every day we're drawing closer to Election Day, I don't think is coincidental. Also, obviously, Trump isn't going to be a part of this particular briefing. And so I think that, you know, it's possible we could hear something new, but I would imagine that given what we've been hearing thus far, that it's likely going to be, discussion around the idea that the administration is working with governors in states that have seen an increase in the number of cases, but also the idea that, again, what Trump has been emphasizing, that the death rate is still, as of now, on a downward trajectory.
Now, when the president was more fully involved in these briefings, I think it's safe to say it didn't turn out too well politically for him. Is that possibly part of what's at play here in his focus away from the pandemic?
I think that's absolutely very likely. There is a lot of polling at this stage that indicates that significant portions of the public, even in some cases, majority of the public aren't happy with the way in which Trump has responded to the coronavirus pandemic. And so I think given that, part of the strategy here is to kind of distance Trump from the federal response and not make him a primary focus of that, and, let Trump get out there. And as he did in Arizona this week, talk about different things like, his border wall initiative and other things that he, that his team have determined are, more politically advantageous at this stage.
It's interesting that as this pandemic continues, the Trump administration last night filed a briefing with the Supreme Court arguing to scrap the entire Affordable Care Act in a case that's probably going to come up right around the time of the election.
Yeah, and this is an interesting development because it does sort of position the Affordable Care Act as being potentially, a bigger issue in the 2020 campaign than it might have otherwise been. And obviously, we all know that Joe Biden, was not only Obama's vice president during the time in which the Affordable Care Act passed, but he was, kind of he was Obama's point man up on Capitol Hill, helping to push those negotiations through. And so I think that is something, to keep in mind, and certainly something that the Trump administration is going to try to take advantage of, because, we all know that in 2010, 2 years after Obama was elected and shortly after the Affordable Care Act passed, that Republicans, the Tea Party, made a huge surge in Congress. And so there's still, in certain pockets, animosity out there among voters towards the Affordable Care Act. But I think it's important to keep in mind that this strategy, the dynamics have shifted, and the strategy has the potential of backfiring because, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. And so I think the way people are viewing healthcare is shifting in ways that are not fully understood yet. And also, we know even before that, the Affordable Care Act has become more popular than it was 10 years ago.
And not only are we in the middle of a pandemic, we're also in the middle of a national conversation about race and policing in this country. And the House has passed its version of a police reform bill, but it doesn't look like it's broken through the impasse on Capitol Hill.
No, it doesn't. And I think this is an instance where, perhaps what we might see is Democrats, having made potentially the calculation that heading into the election, they would rather have, they're not going to make the kind of headway and get the kind of policy that they want. So if they're not going to get the policy that they think is going to be effective, then it makes sense to sort of shelve the issue and, not go along with what Republicans have proposed, which they view as quite toothless when it comes to police reform. And so I think that's potentially the impasse that we're seeing now. And given that that Democrats don't have a lot of leverage in terms of making things happen in the Senate, this may be where things sit until after the campaign.
Bloomberg U.S. Politics Editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. Read more about these stories on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal, and follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. 6:55 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report, brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, providing industry partners with commercially focused research and innovation services through its New Jersey Innovation Institute. Learn more at njii.com. Now let's see what's happening in science, technology, engineering, and math. You can now see how coronavirus lockdowns have changed air pollution and hospital lights. Using data from 17 satellites, 3 space agencies have created a website that serves as a global dashboard